Hey, everybody.
Hello,
Welcome,
everyone.
welcome, welcome to the Meeple Surf Show. It is I, Sen, and that is he, George.
Mhm.
And we are here to talk to you today about stuff and things. And yeah, we don't have a special guest today because neither of us could think of anybody who, really would love to talk about this stuff, but both of us really want to talk about it. So we thought it'd just be the two of us, and that's okay. So, George, what are we talking about today? Because I forget.
So we're talking about psychographics and psychographic profiles.
Right. Okay, cool. And for those of you who don't know what that means, what we're talking about is something that was coined by the Wizards of the Coast Magic the Gathering design team, headed up by Mr. Mark Rosewater. Rosewater, there we go. And he was the one who originally kind of wrote about these things. So, George, what about player psychographics do you think is interesting in terms of helping us as designers design better?
Well, I was thinking from last week we were talking a bit towards the end about you you have to when you're designing you have to know who you're designing for. You should have an audience. I mean, I've heard people argue to the contrary. I tend to disagree. I think whenever you're creating something, you're creating it for someone. I think most things that are designed for everyone are designed for no one. So to that
Yep.
end, we need to have some understanding of who that is. And I know the two. First of all, I didn't realize that this started with Rosewater. I thought it was something that predated him that he just leveraged, but that's interesting enough. But I mean, the two ways I see this approached, like, are demographic and psychographic. And like, demographic is the, oh, our
Mhm.
target market is 18 to 35 women who something so on, or 45 to 60-year-old men or something like that. Um, and
Mhm.
psychographic is, sorry, this is me
Well,
handing
it's
over
more
to you.
why. Yeah, sorry. It's more the why,
Yeah.
right? Psychographic is the why the players like to play in certain ways, right? So you may seek out a game for different reasons, and there's lots of other ways of codifying how players play or why players play. This is just one way we chose to talk about it because of last week's conversation. And George is a big Magic the Gathering fan, and so am I. So we're just using those terminologies because they are something that is in the zeitgeist of MTG players and has been for a decade really. Because I think it was in like summer of 2015 when this all started, all the psychographic stuff. So it's like 10 years ago, almost to the date. And so let's actually define psychographics. So psychographics, in terms of how Mark Rosewater was using it, was exploring why people play the game or enjoy a game. And in Magic, they had originally started with the three psychographics, which were Timmy slash Tammy, Johnny slash Jenny, and the ubiquitous gender neutral Spike. And those three psychographics kind of encompassed why the majority of people played Magic, right? And so they had, and this is a game coming about what 20 years after Magic had been founded. Yeah, because it's 2015, and we're talking like 1994 to 2015. So we're talking about 20 years of Magic have happened already. And what Mark Rosewater said is we basically essentially boiled down why people play Magic to three quintessential profiles. And so that's what he's doing. He's really doing gamer profiling, guys, which is not necessarily great, but also not necessarily bad. So one of the first things you have to understand about broad statistical analysis when we're talking about population basis, right? So population based statistical analysis does not apply to an individual. Like you just can't do it. And yet everybody tries to, right? And so if you do that, you're being prejudiced. That's what prejudice is. But what you can use broad based statistical analysis to do, or like a population size study, is understand, oh, that's why that happened. Or that's why. It's never going to be the causal thing like, oh, you're, an an Asian man aged 40 to
So
60, you must do X. It's like, why? I don't have to do that. But if it was, oh, you're an Asian man aged this to this, that explains why you have this thing, or that may be a factor in why you have this part of this disease, or view the world such a way, or something like that. So
I think
yeah, you have to
right.
be very careful when you're applying
Hmm.
statistics and a population. Yes, go ahead. Sorry, what were you saying?
I think before we dig into much, I also want to note that much like the conversation we had a couple weeks ago versus is the intellectual versus emotional engagement. It's not; these aren't silos. It's not a person fits into exactly one of these sort of. It's more like a spider graph where like everyone
I
will have
love
some
spider graphs.
proportion. Yes, so do I. It's my favorite graphs.
I actually, like, what I really want to do one day is make a role playing game that uses spider graphs for the stats, and
Mm,
then your goal is to
a
roll
tug
dice
on.
within the area inside of the spider graph. Because as you get more powerful, your spider graph encompasses more area. That's how spider graphs work, right? And yes, radar graphs, spider graphs, similar things. And that has always been a goal of mine, to do that. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but I think it would be really cool, really, really, really cool. So okay, so we've got this idea that we have these three broad categories, and let me see. Let's see what the man himself said. So he said, the point of a psychographic is to try to understand the psychological motivation behind why a person enjoys what they enjoy. It's not about the what yet, but the why. Because we tend to focus on the what when we design. So this was sort of
Mm,
revolutionary in a way, right? Of looking at, well, why do people even like games, specifically Magic in this thing? And so what he did was he came up with the three types: the Timmy, Tammy, Johnny, Jenny, and Spike. Do you know off the top of your head what each of these are?
mm.
Do you remember?
I, I know Spike's the competitive one who enjoys. It's not as simple as they get their satisfaction from winning, but we'll start there. The Johnny, I believe, likes to come up with a plan and execute it, and the what's the other one? The Timmy, what is it about liking big
Timmy.
creatures? Yeah, but I'm trying to remember like
Yes,
in a
that's
broader
what it is.
sense.
Yeah.
I'm trying to extend it out to something more generalizable than magic cards. Well, we can read.
Yeah.
That was
Okay.
the
So
best off the
so
top of my
let's
head.
let's let's talk
Timmy is
about
the one
them.
I'm the
Yeah,
least like, so I don't know
that's
it
pretty
that
good.
well.
Right. So Timmy is playing for fun, right? Using the biggest things possible. Stereotypically, Timmy's Tammies are typically younger, and might play with less complex decks because they're approachable, right? And so one might say that everybody nowadays is a Timmy Tammy because of, like, commander formats. But they're not necessarily in it to win or lose. They're in it to have fun. And really big effects for them tend to be fun. So what Rosewater said was that Timmys want to experience something. And we can draw a direct corollary to what Scott Nicholson said about certain types of players in escape rooms, right? Some players don't really care about solving the puzzle. They care about being in the escape room and experiencing something, and it's cool to be there, right? And so, um, the feelings that Timmy and Tammys get when they play is what they're looking for. They're searching out that kind of like big feeling. And they get that feeling from playing. So I think everybody has a little bit of Timmys in them, but some people are very much Timmys. And those would be people who are like really social about gaming. They may be people who like to explore different decks. They might be power gamings. They want to bash people with like the giant spells and big spells, like you know some kind of like channel fireball combo or whatever, right?
Right.
And there are people who really want to have an experience of unpredictability, which is what a deck gives you, even though you build it first, right?
Mm.
So those are types of Timmies. A griefer could also be a Timmy, somebody who
Mm.
likes the experience of not letting somebody else have fun, right? And it's
Mm.
funny because you could have the exact same deck and not be that person, not be that type of Timmy, but you might be something else. So, for example, I would be called a griefer because I play black, right? And I don't let my opponents do a single thing. I
Just say
play
no.
control, right? I just say, no, you can't do that. That's why I keep 2 mana, 2 blue mana available at all times,
Yeah.
people. It's because I want to say no. I will deny you, deny you, deny you. But I'm not playing because I don't want the other person to play. I don't get a kick out of letting somebody else play.
Mm.
What I get a kick out of is hurting you in the funniest way possible to me, right? In a combo. That's what I'm working for. I'm working for a very specific type of combo based around 1 or 2 cards in my deck. That if I get them out and things work the way they are supposed to work, I will, like, I don't know, maybe hit you with a storm sword for every does a point of damage for every card in your deck. And I've never let you play a single card, so you have like, a lot of cards in your hand, and I just blow you up like that or whatever. So there are also Johnnies and Jennies, and Johnnies and Jennies are more like that creative sort of deck. I would think that I would fall under that in general
I
because I
see
don't only
myself.
fall that one, but
Mm.
that is where I think I am mostly. Is that where you think you are too?
Yeah, I mean, I will generalize it to something else. Like, we both do jujitsu because this is just us
Yep.
talking. So let's just ruin the experience for the audience
Ah,
entirely.
we ruined it for everybody by
Yes,
talking jujitsu.
that's
Okay.
right. My favorite thing in jujitsu is to get into a terrible position and then figure out a way out. And
Yeah.
it's employing that sort of exploring options, seeing opportunities. That's what fascinates me about it, and I feel
Yeah,
like that's
and
a very
learning through
Johnny approach to
failure.
jujitsu.
I
Yeah.
think so too, right? Um, Johnnies are people who use the game as a form of self-expression.
Hmm.
That's what Rosewater says. And that's how I feel about jujitsu too, right? So
Yeah.
I think we're
So,
very similar in that regard.
mm,
Like, it's my expression of a rule set. How do
yes.
I express my own self? Like, this is me in a deck of cards, or this is me on tatami, or this is me, in this case, playing this game. And so, what's very important to Johnny's, and I can say this is me in all games and all sports, is that I win on my own terms, right? I
Mm,
dictate the terms of my winning and my failure, which is exactly what I just told my son the other day. I told Eli, who plays volleyball at a high level, I said, "You know why I don't like team sports? Because then I can blame other people for when I lose, and I can't take all the credit for when I win. And so that's why I like 1v1 games. That's why I like
mm,
jujitsu, is because all the mistakes are mine and I own them. All the successes are mine and I own those too.
mm,
And so I think I'm a Johnny, like, pretty much
mm,
through and
yeah.
through. Um, so I don't net deck. I have never net decked in my life. I detest the concept of net decking. I love the idea that people share their decks and I learn from them for sure, 100%. But I will never verbatim use a net deck. It's also why I don't love, like, pre-bought commander. I just don't. I love drafting formats
Mm,
because you are basically creating your own luck within this real. We do like penny card um drafts where it's like the crappiest cards in the game, but it's
mm,
so fun because it's like that's what's cool about Magic, is like you can still have a really good time as long as everybody is playing within a limit, right?
right.
So I will put my hand up as a suitcase player as well. Like, I used to have 4 of every single card in the game, every single card, up until whenever I quit, which was, I want to say, the dark, or just after the dark.
Oh
So
wow, quite early.
yeah,
So you were just in for
well,
like
because
2 years. Yeah.
I was in. I was very in. I had, like I said, I had 4 mocks, everything, 4 lotuses, 4 anything that you could have, because they had the limit of 4 cards of everything,
Right.
right? So could I have 4? If I could have 4 of it, I'd put 4 in there. um, because that's how early on I was in the game. And yeah, when I got out, it was because of school, because I almost failed out of school, as the famous story goes. And so Magic was a big part of that, and role playing games were a big part of that. Any lifestyle game. So I sold all my Magic cards. I sold. I didn't sell my D&D stuff. I just didn't play it anymore. And I sold all my Warhammer because that was just consuming my life.
Mm.
Um, and then I went on to other things, not better things, just other things. And Magic the Gathering paid for 10 years of university. That's what happened there. Okay. Anyways, so Spike, you're right. So Spike is the like the win at any cost type of player. They will net deck. Oh, going back to Jimmy's and Johnny's and Jenny's. Johnny and Jenny, other subcategories of them are like combo players, offbeat design. You know, people who are actually designing their decks to do this like one weird thing, and if it happens, it's awesome. That's what I like. People who use their decks as like an expression of themselves. Also, I think what I like. Like I don't play certain colors just because it isn't me. It just
Mm.
isn't me to play green. I just
It's
I
red for me,
try.
but I
Yeah,
understand.
so yeah, green red is literally I don't do it. I will play red with another color sometimes. I'll play green with another colors,
Mm.
but I am like blue black, like that is like my heart and soul. And if I have to add red, I'll add red, and if I have to add green, I'll add green. But always within like a theme of something. Like, okay,
Mm.
so what can I use to like destroy every piece of land you have, you know, that kind of thing. And I look in that color for what that does there. um so some other people in the Johnny lands, Johnny Jenny land, are like they're like people who like to like shoot the moon, which is, I think I said it last week. That's my favorite thing to do, is like
Mm.
do something that should not be technically possible, or like you're winging a prayer and you're like rolling the dice and seeing if it
Mm.
happens, like getting that one combo. And if somebody says you can't do that, I'm certainly going to try to do it, right? Um, and these are the type of people who will use cards that are not good, but they'll do something neat with them, right? That again is something I like to do. So I'm I'm definitely more a Johnny than Timmy. And then Spike, getting down to Spike here, we're talking about competitive players, people who will net deck, people who will look for the most efficient way to do something. Um, Yeah, and so they play to win. That's it. Like they might be innovators because they're going out on the edge and doing edge case stuff, but they're doing it because they've sensed an exploit, not because they're
Right.
being creative, right? People who are always fine tuning their decks, they are the people who like might really think about their sideboard a lot, you know. Um, they're people who might analyze statistics and, you know, base their decisions on like, you know, last year's meta was this and this year's meta is that. Meta is kind of the overall idea of the game and what's working, what's not, and what people are tending to play. And they might also be people who are like like tuning their deck so much that they understand the predictability of their own deck. Like, okay, there's only one more land in this deck, right? Or there's only
Mm.
the percentage chance of me drawing a creature that I can cast right now is whatever. They know their deck so well. Um, yeah, and they probably have different views of each other, right? Like Spike probably doesn't think a Timmy is very experienced, and you know, a Johnny might see a Spike as, you know, being kind of uptight, and Timmy might see like a Johnny as being pretentious, right? So
Mm.
there's all these kind of interplay between the player types. So now that we kind of understand what the three major player types are, there are also the psychographics, sorry, there are also the aesthetics, which are Melvins and Vorthoses. And Melvins and Vorthoses really are just mechanics versus themes. Melvin, mechanic; Vorthos, quite obviously, theme matters, right? And so you can have like a Spike Vorthos combo, a Melvin Johnny combo, etc., etc. So they are a sort of different consumer different consumer profiles that will be applied as well, where people find beauty in the game in different ways, right? Is it the art? Is it the lore? Those are Vorthos kind of characteristics. Is it like the cool mechanisms and how things combo up? That would be more of a Mel, which is the name that they use now because it's unisex. There you go. So I think those are really all the things we're talking about. Um, whether we are thinking of magic or whether we're applying it broadly. So we wanted to talk about it not in reference to magic, although everything we just talked about was magic. But how do you see these go beyond Magic the Gathering, George? What do you want to do with these, or what can we do with these?
Well, I mean, I suppose the first thing I was thinking about is, are these sorts of things that you apply as you're doing your initial design, or is this something that becomes more relevant as you're doing play tests, as you're putting the game in front of people, and you're seeing people react to different things in different ways, and you're looking to make changes, and you're saying like, well, you don't. I mean, maybe you want to make a game for just one for like one of these specific silos. If we're just going to take these three silos
Sure.
as the as given. But probably not. Probably you want to provide a game that has something for not something for everyone, because that's not what I'm trying to say, but
Hmm.
something that within a different sort of like, if you've got people who'd be interested in your theme in the general context of the game, like something for everyone to latch onto. Um, or maybe it's that you're looking at feedback and you're saying like, well, this is feedback about something that I've designed that's probably more for a competitive player, but it's coming from someone who's more of a creative player. So
Yes.
how do I weight that sort of feedback there?
I think that is a really good question, right? So, for the first part of the question is like, when do you start thinking about this? I technically start at the beginning because I
Okay.
am really an experienced first designer, which then kind of makes me more designing specifically for, you know, Johnny's and a little bit of Timmy's, right? So I'm probably designing more for that psychographic, but what I'm really doing over the course of the game is I think about myself like sometimes as like a game whisperer that the game will reveal itself to me as I talk to it like, so what do you really want to be, game? I have this idea, but I don't want to ever kind of like smash a square peg into a round hole, right? And so I don't think I think that much about the Timmys, Tammys, Johnnies, Jennies, et cetera, at the beginning. I think I have a rough idea. Like, oh, this is going to be a game for people who like X, or this is going to be a game for people who appreciate this. And often they're games for people who are like me, probably because you design what you like a lot of times, right? Not always, but a lot. And I think what it really comes out to really looking at, player motivations, like why am I gaming, is definitely once you put it in front of other people than yourself, right? When you're play testing it with other people and you kind of do that thinking in your head, okay, this is a person who is giving me this feedback. What type of gamer are they? Is this game even for them? Does that make their feedback more or less weighty, right? So there's definitely some times when out of audience, and that's really what all this is about, everybody. It's like finding the audience for the game or just finding the audience for the game or sticking to the audience for the game or broadening the audience for the game, anything, but it's audience in a large kind of broad category. But if it's something that somebody says and they're not who I thought would like the game, but there's a really insightful feedback, maybe it is for them. Or maybe we can pivot to be for them. And that I think comes down to overall vision or initial vision of a game. Like, who did you think it was for? Are you okay with changing that? Um, is the person who's giving you feedback, if they're not the audience, are they switching the game, changing the game to be more like a game that they would want to play? And these are very legitimate questions, and you can literally discount whole streams of feedback if they are people who are trying to change your game away from what your initial vision is, if you don't want to go the way they're thinking. However, you may notice that, oh, this is actually really good feedback. It's funny. There was a question the other day on like one of the forums online where somebody was saying this exact same thing. He's like, my intention was to make like a kids game, a family game where parents and kids could play together, blah blah blah. And he played it with a bunch of gamers and game designers, and they give really good feedback, but it would change the game out of the audience he had in mind. And he was asking people like, what should I do? Right? It's an
Mm.
interesting problem
I
because
mean,
it is actually really quite interesting. Like if you place a game that's a family game with a company that has the market penetration for family games, you'll sell an order of magnitude more games.
mm,
You will. But if you can make
mm,
it a game that really core audience of gamers and you can appeal to that gamer group, they will evangelize it and may make it sell really well as well, right? Which is the conundrum. Like, do you want to be like the person who is selling games to like hardcore fans and they're really big fans of your games and your types of games, or do you want to be a person who's selling to a broader audience but that audience is less cool in the minds of the hobby gamers, right? So
well,
go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, something I've seen happening recently is sort of like a dipping in both pools. So like I know
Hmm.
Gloomhaven recently put out, well, maybe not recently, maybe last year or 18 months, like the buttons and something like the lighter weight
Yeah. Yeah.
version
Yeah.
of that. And I can't
Bugs.
remember what.
Is it bugs and buttons or something like that? I can't
Something like
remember
that,
either.
yeah. But I mean, you know what I'm talking about. And
Yes.
I've seen a couple other examples that I just can't immediately bring to mind, but where like they chose one path first, but and I would love, be curious to know whether like they always had that lighter path in mind as well, or whether like no, they just said this succeeded. Let's see if we can modify it, we can make a version of this that it appeals to another audience on the back of that.
Yeah. Well, I'm shaking my head in like not knowing it for sure, but I highly
Okay,
doubt it was
okay,
their initial thing. Just kind of knowing how things came to be.
mm,
However, I actually think, if I'm not mistaken, and somebody might be able to correct me out there, but in the back of my head, something is saying to me that Bugs and Buttons was from like a fan idea
okay,
or something like that. I may be misspeaking, but yeah, it really wasn't in my limited knowledge of the history of the game, was not the initial concept or a part of the initial like we're gonna totally do this 5 years after we make this game.
right.
I don't even know if they thought about Frosthaven, so
Mhm.
which is much more on track with the original
Yeah.
Gloomhaven.
Have you ever had a design project where it seemed like there was potentially two games here instead of one, and like you obviously wouldn't prefer probably didn't pursue them in parallel, but
Yeah, actually, it's odd where this is happening literally right now to Alara, Katie, and I, where we made a game and the studio that we made it for had head one, like, and then head one left, and now head two is in, and they're like, well, we like this part of it. And so the audience has changed, right? And
okay.
so we're stuck with this conundrum where it's like, do we change it or do you just break it apart and make two separate games?
Hmm.
And so that's the conversation that we're probably having on Friday, which is
Okay.
like, what are we going to do with all of this? Because the audience has changed an actually literal way. The studio head has changed. So
Hmm.
one of them had a different vision than the other, and that's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a thing. So this
Yeah,
thing that was in development is now going back into development because the new studio head has a different vibe on what he wants the game to be. That's neither here nor there, but it's like we want to talk to him and figure out what is the audience that we're actually approaching with this one. Can we, or should we then make the original game the way we wanted to, and then take the things out of it that you like particularly that you now want to focus on that we don't think really is the focus of the game and make a whole new game out of that, right? So I mean maybe we're just talking ourselves into more work, I don't know, to a whole other game. But yeah, I think that does happen, right? So right now Jay and I are working on a bunch of family games that are taking from our past experiences with some of our very successful games, and we're seeing, can we make the game for a different audience,
Mm,
right? Which is looking at demographics, but also maybe gameplay, um, style. But a lot of the cases, what we're doing is we're just like taking the demographic and changing it, which are, like George says, age, gender, you know, time played, all these things that sometimes have an impact and sometimes really don't. But what we're trying to do really is take a hobby game mechanism and slim it down, simplify it a little bit, make it more approachable. It's not simple, but it's simpler for an audience that is slightly less savvy in terms of
mm,
game literacy and that kind of thing. So making it very easy and approachable to play with a lot of help from the components in the board, and hopefully, if I have my way, reducing complexity overall, so that it is something that will come off the shelf more than not. So yeah, that's kind of where we're going, and so that is like we are intentionally changing the audience and seeing how does that affect mechanical decisions, how does that affect all the play, and is the experience going to be slightly different because the audience is different, right? And so this is less with psychographics and more with demographics. But I think the other questions that you might have when you go the other way is more about psychographics,
mm,
when the whys of playing, um,
mm,
or the what people are looking for come out a little differently. What about you? Have you
mm.
ever had a case where you've found people who enjoy games for totally different reasons than you do look at a game that you're making and like really actually affect or impact the design decisions you're making in terms of changing it into something else?
Oh, definitely. And sort of leads into my next question for you. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I've had people. I had an idea of the way a direction something should go, mostly because I started with a sort of a mechanical structure that I wanted, or an interaction between the way the game plays, um, that I wanted to have a certain feel, and I attached what I thought was a theme that went with it. And when people, I explain the theme, I put the content on the table. The experience they're getting doesn't fit the expectation I set I set I set forth with them with the theme, and which leaves me in a position where I have to decide: do I want to change the mechanics of the game to give them the thematic experience I want, or do I
Right.
need to change the theme to fit the mechanical experience? And where I was going with this is what something that I feel like I need to do is that I don't have I'm not going to say like a mission statement, but like a clearly defined design document, like high level, saying this is where I want this to go.
Mhm.
And I feel like at my stage in my design journey, I need that sort of discrete statement. I imagine you don't need to do that so much anymore.
No, 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 I still
Okay.
do it.
Okay. No, tell me about this
I
then.
think it's I think it's a good habit. I think every designer should write out their vision statements, what I call it, like a
Okay.
vision document, which is like, what do I hope this ends up being? And it doesn't mean that it's like written in stone. It's literally on Google Docs. It can change, right? You can go back. You can
Hmm,
do that in Google Docs. It's awesome.
hmm,
Revert to last version.
hmm.
Um, and the way that I use it is when I get feedback, I check it. Like it's like basically
Okay.
like a check against myself. It's like, am I still going in the direction I thought I was?
Hmm,
Is it okay if I'm not? If I'm not, what's changing and why? And do I want to go back to the original thing, or do I modify my vision?
hmm,
Which is fine. That's what I'm saying, right? But it's a good touchstone to have so that you remain true to yourself, and you kind of know what it helps you um, cut through a lot of the weeds, right? Where the weeds, I mean, is feedback, and sometimes feedback is not necessarily for your game because you don't need it to make the game the way you want to make it, right? That
okay.
feedback was for the benefit of the person who's playing, and they would like it to
Ah,
change because they want something else out of it experientially, right?
hmm,
So I use it as a way to kind of justify it's not listening to somebody because I listen to it, just not applying it, right?
Right.
There's a difference, right? I listen to everybody's feedback, but I don't apply a good amount of it. It's sometimes here's the thing, and I learned this from actually making mind management, because mind management, when you play it, if you've never played it, please do if you want to. It's great. You can play it on BGA, Board Game Arena. You can play with an app solo. It's wonderful. But one thing you'll realize once you start playing it is that negative information, like getting a no, is just as important as getting positive information, which is like a hit that, yeah, I was there at some point in time. Because if you look at all the negative information, you'll realize the shape of the game isn't what the shape of the game isn't. And that sounds really weird,
No, no,
but
no.
it's an important thing to understand. It's as important to define what the shape is as it is to define what you don't want it to be. When you're creative, I don't want it to be that. I don't want to be this. Otherwise, you're going to be listening to everybody, and that way lies ruin. I'm not saying don't listen to feedback, but I'm saying pick and choose which feedback you listen to, because some of it is maybe going to lead you away from what you personally want the game to be. And you said it really eloquently at the beginning, George, is that games that are designed for everybody don't make anybody that happy. You said it even better than that, because you're George, the master of eloquence, right?
Concision. We'll say concision. Oh, what was I going to say? I just forgot.
I don't know.
I suppose it was a rhetorical question. It'll come back to me. Oh no, I was thinking
Yeah,
talking about the negative space sort of thing. I
Mhm.
mean, that's like it's like one of those things that's misunderstood about the way science works. That science doesn't ever prove anything right. It can tell you
No.
what things are wrong, and I guess whatever's left that's repeatable is we infer to be correct simply due to its.
Yeah, you're moving towards understanding, right?
Hmm,
By moving away from misunderstanding. It's definitely not this, or this has a low correlation,
yeah.
so we're not going to factor this in anymore. Yeah, science is very misunderstood. If you follow me on Facebook, you can go look at a very good post about science that I just made. It wasn't me; it was like other scientists talking about science and inference, and currently what's happening with with RFK and all the autism stuff, which is very near and dear to my heart as somebody who works with people with autism on a daily basis, and who is neurodivergent themselves. So it is kind of a load of hogwash the way they're portraying it. And not to get too political, but correlation, causation, not the same thing. Obviously, we know that as scientists, but also, um, you know, how science is communicated is really important. And a good science communicator would have never said any of the things or the way that it was said. I don't know if they did that intentionally or if they just didn't listen to their speechwriters. I don't know, but the way they are throwing around words is very biased, right? And that's the
Yes.
problem. Is science should not be biased. Science should just be, this is the fact, and here's what it looks like.
Yeah, they're very much starting from a
And
conclusion, and
yes, going backwards, right?
yes.
So, anyways, politics aside and autism aside, I just wanted to look at what's happening. Luke said that this is an interesting topic, and he said that that's exactly what's happening to him right now. One part of his games is so much more interesting and less fiddly, and the original game is still being developed though, so maybe he's going to pull some apart. And Foyo Game came out and said, "Yeah, I really wish there was no net decking either." Right? The internet is simultaneously the best invention of all time, and the worst invention of all time. Right? And then he confirmed that Buttons and Bugs was indeed a fan-made game. So yeah, it's like I remember these things. I have a memory still. Um, and then, yeah, right. No way that Tylenol is causing autism. Yeah, and there's all sorts of biases that go towards studies when you look at, people who are more likely to take Tylenol when pregnant are also more likely to seek medical advice, and when they seek medical advice, they're more likely to their children are going to get diagnosed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So you have to understand how science works in order to draw any conclusions from a scientific report, which is why I ask my students in first year, please don't go to like a super duper deep medical journal because you won't understand it. You just won't. right?
Mhm.
My job is to teach you how to understand that, but you don't start by diving into like the deepest part of the ocean to learn how to swim, right?
Mhm.
We start with
Yeah.
smaller things where we learn critical thinking on things that we can actually absorb and think critically about. When you lack the literature, the literacy to talk about, what a medication is doing inside of a body, it's not, it doesn't help anybody to dive too deep anyways. Cite your sources, please, everybody. I still want that as a shirt. Like I would wear that to class every day. Cite your sources. And causation does not equal correlation does not equal causation. I would wear that shirt too. Whole bunches of shirts I would wear. I could have a whole like wardrobe just based on witty sayings about science and people's failures to understand science. Um, cool. So yes, I think there's a point where understanding your players and your player base, if we're talking about things, right? Understanding the people who like your style of game is really important, because especially if you like those games yourself, that you are going to be making more of them, or your brand is going to be associated with them, whether it's your publishing company or your name as a designer. I think there are definitely people out there. They're a weird bunch, but they like look for games that Jay and I make because they like how Jay and I make games, and
Mhm.
so there's this kind of symbiosis
Mhm.
where we're eating food and they're picking food out of our teeth to survive. That no, that didn't make any sense. Where it's like those birds who fly
I,
on rhinoceros, right? And they clean like the mouths of the rhinoceros or something. I think
I,
that's what they do. I can't remember.
I'm I have no idea where this metaphor has gone, but I think things anyone who creates something has a point of view,
Yeah.
and if people enjoy that point of view, like, and it's just part of who they are, like no matter what it is you're creating, I don't think you can entirely divorce that point of view from the creation process, and so people who enjoy that point of view will seek more things from the people who have that point of view that they enjoy, and I think there's nothing strange about that at all. I mean,
No,
it's
and especially in these day and age, again, the internet being the best and the worst of things, that we have much more access, ready access to creators, and people can tell us what they like, and then we can make more of that thing, right? Or people can tell us what they don't like, and we can avoid that thing, or not listen to them if we aren't making games for that person anyway, right? So, and I think that's the hardest part of it all, is really listening to feedback and deciding what to go on based on some preconceived notion of what my decision space should be, based on maybe psychographics, right? And so as an experiment, you should all try to make a game for some types of players, right? Some psychographic, and then figure out, how do I tailor all the feedback that I get to fit within that goal of making a game for the Johnnies, or making a game for the Spikes, or making a game for the Timmies and Tammies and Jennies, and even the Mels and the Vorthoses is. Um, well, why I'm saying that is as a experiment, or as an exercise as the designer, it will really help you learn about how to handle feedback, right? Both as like listening and parsing it and applying it, but also how to talk to people about feedback. About it seems, and a cat had this happen to her. I think before, you might remember this, George, when she told somebody. So somebody gave her feedback. She said, "Oh well, you're not really in the audience of who I'm designing for, but thank you for your feedback." And the person got really upset at her because it's like, I buy games. I'm in your audience, right?
I
It's like
remember. Yeah,
it's like,
that's
yeah, I
that's
get
a
what you're
it's a
saying, but
wide net.
yeah, that's a really wide net. But he also had the point, like, I buy games for my kids, and if this is a kid's game, I'm not a kid, but I'm in the game buying audience. So I think there is a point where that saying is quite, or could be perceived as dismissive. And so that's what you don't want to be, right? You want to say, "Hey, that's great feedback. You might want to frame your game first, when you're playing role playing. When you're play testing with people, it's really important to frame what type of feedback you're looking for, what type of feedback you honestly don't want at all.
Mm,
Like I don't need any feedback about illustrations or graphic
mm,
design right now. We've got that covered. This is just a prototype. Don't worry about it, right? I really want you to focus on giving me feedback in this. And if you can tell your playtesters, especially if they're other designers, who you're designing for, that will help put a psychographic in their head. It could just be like, I
mm,
really want this game to be played by kids who are, 12 and above by themselves. I want them to be able to play by themselves. That's a demographic, but you know what I mean,
mhm,
right? Um, because that really does help. And so, actually, oddly enough, and I should do this. I've been meaning to do this for a while now.
mm,
Alara and I will write like characteristics on cards when we're solo playing or when we're
mm,
playing with like two-handed and just four players. We'll
mhm,
write like this is Jimmy Joe Bob, and Jimmy Joe Bob is
mm,
this, and this is how Jimmy Joe Bob plays, and here's how Emily Elizabeth plays. Emily Elizabeth plays like this, and when we are playing their hands, we follow those like quirks or rules, right?
Yeah, I've never written it down, but in my head, when I have to play two hands, I try to treat them like as different personalities. Like these people have
Yeah,
different in this game because otherwise, yeah, it just
it's
becomes
all
mono.
George all the time, and then we get a
Yeah,
very George game, and it ends up being
nobody wants
jujitsu.
that. Yeah.
We looked at the jujitsu game before.
Yes.
It's a game about jujitsu.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but what what Erica and I were talking about, just as a freebie printable giveaway thing, was we were going to create like playing characteristic cards where you like
Ah,
deal out three to each hand, um, and that's how you play for playtesting purposes, right? Because we need to kind of understand different perspectives. I know that empathy has been thought of over the last couple of weeks as a word that's been bandied about. Like empathy is like the worst thing ever. It caused a lot of damage. Okay, whatever. Empathy for game designers is a superpower
mm,
because you have to understand what other people get out of games, which is really what the whole concept of psychographics and aesthetic profiling is about. It's like, do you understand what people like when they play a game? And if you
mm,
do, then you can build the game towards the things that that particular group kind of like. Or you can go away from things that they don't like, right? That's equally kind of almost equally as good. Um, but yeah, so having playtest hands or characters to work with, that might be fun. That maybe just have some people's faces on them and their characteristics and
nice. Sounds like a
make
great
them around.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe I'll make those. Um, David said he loves to write quotes for what players might say during the game at those key moments. Okay, David, you're on the team. We're gonna make this
That's a great
a thing. I
idea.
can write all the quotes. Oh, golly gee, I didn't know that would happen. Or
You're on flavor
damn it,
text.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And then they could like, what'd be great is if we could like write a little program that like, what do they say now? You press a button, it calls up a random saying, you know, yippee ki or something, right? Anyways, so yeah, I think having those concepts of why players play, why people play in general is good because it's not the same as you or I all the time,
Mm,
right? So here's the thing, right? And this is why it's good to also design with other people, right? Or
mm,
play test widely with other people. Because if I design with George, we'd end up saying everything's perfect. This is the best game ever because we like the same things. But
mm,
Jay and I definitely don't love the same things. We like a lot of similar things, but I think the strength of our design is that we are appealing to a slightly wider base of audience while still being able to refine the rough sides or the bloated parts off of what the other person wanted, right?
mm,
It's like, don't do that. That's not cool. But no, 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 no. Here's how it's the interaction here is not going to work. Okay.
mm,
And then we take some of the stuff out. And that happens to my stuff all the time. It's like, I wanted to do this because it would be, in my mind, cool. And Jay's like, yeah, it would be cool, but only like one player is ever going to understand that. So what's the point? Right. And so you get rid of lots of edge cases when you are designing with other people who you don't have to um, Well, you have to appease them, right? You have to really explain yourself well. And if you can't articulate your ideas well to somebody, maybe they shouldn't be in the game. Imagine that. Imagine that. It's all about communication, right? We talked about science communication. These are rules, communicating rules and ideas. And if you cannot do it well, then you may have to just sit on it for a while because a game, and I talked about this with Eric the other day, Eric Dewey. I did a recording for a podcast on games about what TTRPGs can learn from board games and vice versa, what board games can learn from TTRPGs. And TTRPGs, everybody, can be pretty loosey goosey because everybody hacks them anyways, right? We homebrew stuff all the time. But that can't happen as much for board games. Board games break when they're very fragile, right? They're a fragile ecosystem, and when one rule gets misinterpreted, everything kind of falls off the rails a little bit, and even more so depending how much of a tent pole that rule is, right? So I think if you're trying to make games, a good idea is to talk to other people about it. Like, don't design in a vacuum. Whether you're taking on, a partner in co-design, that's a whole other story. But articulating your ideas to real humans is really important. So get your game on the table, put it in front of other people as soon as possible. And remember that spoken word is different than written word, and how we interpret them can be changed. We talked a little bit about game literacy before. People with very low game literacy are really hard to teach games to. And people with high game literacy are also hard because they make assumptions about things that may or may not be true because they have so much experience playing games in certain ways. And if you break one of those tropey rules, it's like, when I pick up my cards, do I pick up my cards after you
Right.
deal them, or
Yeah.
do I leave them face down? And they'll make assumptions. Oh yeah, cards are dealt, I pick them up. And you have to say, no, 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 in your rules. Do not pick up your cards until phase XYZ. And all that stuff just makes the game hard to learn
You
for
need
everybody.
enough that's familiar to make people comfortable before you make them before you surprise them with something interesting or something different.
hmm Yeah. Luke is saying here that he loves putting systems together and thinking more about demographics, but also thinking about how, like, specific types of players, like aggressive players, like a spike, could exploit mechanisms. That's a great way to think about it too. It's like, how would a spike play with this? Oh, that would be bad, right? They would automatically win because they're going to do the aggressive play all the time. They'll just spam the same move over and over again, right? And it's really funny. Like, if you are a fighting game player, right, like Street Fighter and those types of games, like, that's exactly those balances. It's always like rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock, but with some physicality and, hit boxes and pixels and space and juggling and all these things surrounding them, in terms of, they're actually, a lot of them are actually like exploits of the game's, like, core systems. But anyways, that aside, like, thinking about how to counter a really aggressive player when you're a much more kind of free form, I just like to play because of the art, or I like to play because the combos are cool. How can they play on equal terms in the same game? Magic has accomplished that, right? Like, a spike player is not always going to win. They're just not. A Timmy player is not always going to win. A Johnny player is not always going to win. They can all probably equally win. That's the cool thing about Magic. But they have that because there's, like, a database of tens of thousands of cards now. But if you have a game and you sit those three psychographics at the table, you should probably want them all to be able to win. Otherwise, they're really going to go, that game is not for me. But that's okay too, right? It's okay to have a focused game, like what George was saying before, because there are people who don't like Magic at all, but still those three psychographics exist within it, right? Oh, David has a question. Let's ask David's questions. George, do you think it's important for designers to know and communicate intended audiences to publishers when pitching? I want to create experience X for type Y players. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know that if I would say that during a pitch. I feel like I need to present to them the game it is, and it's up to them to see where, because I don't know what they're going to want to what they're going to see in this. I mean, I've seen people get pick up games just for like the one or two mechanisms. They see a core loop and they're like, this is something we can work with, and go. So I'm not sure if I want to bound too much what's going to encourage them to pick up the game that I'm pitching them. I mean, it may help them understand. I don't know, but I don't know. What do you think? I'd be a little hesitant to restrict their viewpoint.
I don't think I'd say that. I don't like saying a lot of stuff, right? Like I don't even want to say this is like X plus Y with this twist. Hey deadpan. And the reason is because I don't want to poison the well. Like I don't
Yeah.
want the the publisher to say no it doesn't, or that didn't work, or that doesn't seem to fit with this. I want them to make their own decisions, and if they say to me, oh, it's just like Sushi Go plus um you know,
Risk.
poker, it's like, yeah, you got it, right? Or if they say, oh, this would be a really great game for, you know, people who like this type of game, it's like, yes, that was my thinking
Mm.
exactly. Now I won't lie, I won't say yes, that was what I was thinking exactly when it wasn't. I won't do that because that's silly. Don't do that. But I will for sure kind of, I want to lead them to the water, but they need to drink.
Mm.
And then I will confirm it. And the reason why I do that, David, is because people like feeling smart and people like feeling clever, right? And if they feel clever because they saw it, chef's kiss. You've got them. They're now eating out of your hands. I'm actually not kidding. That is a very powerful, persuasive communication style, right? Is to let people feel smart.
Mm.
And that's what a lot of publishers get in the game for. It's because they can't design or they don't design. Maybe they'll eventually design, but they have good taste or they think they have good taste. Good enough taste to pick art, good enough taste to say that game is going to make 1,000 unit sales like this, so I'm going to print 10,000. You know, they have to make these decisions based on the strength of their perception of their own ability to pick a winner. And so I want them to pick the winner that they feel is going to win, not tell. I don't want to tell them, because here's the other thing. I think I've said this a bunch over the time in this show, that if you make a promise and that promise doesn't get lived up to or is broken in some way, shape, or form, the pedestal that you fall from is really high.
Mm.
Right. So if you know, this game is a great game for families, they can pick it right up, and if he puts it in front of a bunch of families, like, Sen, I put this in front of 10 different families, and I got to tell you, none of the kids could play without their parents. And you're like, oh, well, then maybe I
Mm.
shouldn't have said that. Right. Maybe I
Yeah.
oversold it. Right. So you do have to be your own salesman or salesperson. Right. But be very careful about making hard promises about things that aren't necessarily true or that you haven't proven within, like, you know, with a confidence in
Confidence interval.
yes, of 0.05, right?
Yeah.
um Sorry, we were talking about science and causation and stuff like
Mm.
that. Yes, anyways. Yeah,
That's
and
the.
I again, like, yeah, get them interested and get them invested in what they see in it, and they'll be more likely to, like, see that vision or have another vision or share the vision with you, right? And that's good.
Mm.
Um, yeah, Luke's right too, right? You'd also be pitching to a publisher you think would have access to your audience. That's a great point, Luke. I love it. So when you guys are pitching, look for people who are aligned with the type of game you're pitching to them. Like, don't pitch GMT, really light, family friendly drafting game, because they only make war games, guys, or games that are war game adjacent, right? Pretty much, right? Don't pitch, I don't know, some companies will take anything, right? But don't pitch a company that specializes in a type of game, a game that they do not specialize in. You'll also see on a lot of game companies, they don't want party games, they don't want role playing games, they don't want miniature games, they don't want whatever they don't want. Don't show them that thing. Look at their catalog, see what the types of games they like, see what kind of audiences they usually put in their lifestyle pictures. That's a lot of work, but you can do it. And, you know,
I mean, it
when you
goes.
have a game for them, you'll get the feels.
it goes to what you said on so many of our conversations about pitching, which is that respecting people's time is the by
Yeah.
far the most important thing, because that's the most
Yeah.
valuable thing we have.
Yeah. Don't make promises you can't keep, and don't waste people's time.
Mm.
Those are cardinal rules that I live by. Kind of in almost anything I do, to be honest. But
Seems fair.
yeah, right. There's just good rules
Mm.
to live by. I
Yeah.
should make shirts. I'll make shirts.
More shirts.
Well, actually, we should
Just
make
one
shirts of
shirt.
people's player types too, and then
Yeah.
they can wear the shirt so we know who's playing the Timmy today. Um, yeah, lots of good stuff. So, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
we talked for an hour. How did that happen?
Yeah.
Lots of stuff.
Yeah.
Guys,
Excellent.
if there's any questions that you have, get them out now or forever hold your peace. If you're looking for more information on the psychographics, take this link down, or you can just look up like Magic Psychographics. And if you find the mtgfandom.com site, it's got a really good rundown, like a Wikipedia style rundown on this from with the direct quotes from like Mark Rosewater and whatnot. Again, if you are at all interested in card based game design, just listen to Mark. Like he's written the book. I guess I don't know if he's actually written a book, but he's written many podcasts,
Yes.
many
So many.
podcasts and blog posts. He's written the blog. That's it. He's written the blog that'll cover the one blog to rule all blogs about TTRP, not TTRPGs, sorry, about CCGs. So yeah, there you go. And I don't know what else is happening in the world that we need to talk about before we head out there. George, is there anything else?
I mean, I think we pretty much. This was certainly an excellent introduction to this topic.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, I'm not going to be at any conventions this year. Kat will be at Essen, but she'll be working, so she'll be very hard to find. That's from my end.
Yeah, I was supposed to go to Supernova this weekend in Halifax, but my wife somehow found herself on the board of directors for a football team.
Okay.
So she's
Sure.
doing that this weekend. So I am not doing that. If you want to chit chat, you can find me on Blue Sky at Senfeng Lim. And George, where people can find you?
Still Drarink on some of the things. Yeah.
Most of the things, right? And you can reach that Maple Syrup on all the things for at least the ads, right? If you want to help keep the lights on, you can check us out at patreon.com/maple syrup. I don't think I've looked at that in many years, but you can go. I don't think we put up stuff there a lot. So, and then, hey, do we have any final advice? What's your final advice, George?
It's not final advice, but I'm gonna take the opportunity to say I just saw that if you're old and an anime fan, there's a 4K remaster of Perfect Blue that's going out in the theaters this weekend. And if you haven't seen Perfect Blue,
ooh, very nice.
you should.
I love that. Yeah, I love that there's so much anime going in theaters now.
Yeah, so that's my. I mean, I haven't seen it since it came out in '97. So
yeah, it's a good one. If you're an Aronofsky fan, you should also go see it. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
I know.
All right. Yeah. Next week, I have no clue what we're doing, but we also had no clue this week, and we talked for a whole hour. So, I mean, it's going to be all right, right? George will have a question burning in his skull. He'll let me know, and we'll find somebody to talk about it or not, and then we'll come and do something. All right. So, everybody, we will see you next week. It was lovely to see you here. Deadpan, David, Luke. I think there was somebody else here at the beginning. Folio, there you go. Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. And we'll see you all again next week, hopefully. All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.